on the internet and saying, let's go Azure Trust Center, and this is what it's going to look like when you come to the site. And we change this frequently, so depending on when you actually do the search, it may have a different splash screen or what's on, but you can see the investments that we're making in R&D. We have cybersecurity experts employed by our company. We even have, I talk about I'm in the dream job now. I think my other favorite dream job, we have a red and blue team inside of Microsoft. We actually have internal Microsoft employees that every day they wake up trying to defeat each other. They try to break in, and we have defenders. I mean, we have this type of stuff. We think about this. And we talk about Brad Smith, another one, and he's the father of Azure, Mark Rusinovich. If you ever get a chance to hear him talk, especially if you're looking where our future of our cloud is going, once again, hugely entertaining, hugely smart dude that we have inside of here. But we also have compliance offerings. Now, I like this one because I get asked this all the time. What does Microsoft have around compliance? So if I say learn about compliance offerings, we can actually come in and take a look at all the compliances we offer as an organization. We lead the industry in this. Now, when I say that, I always smile because generally once we get a compliancy, people will follow along because cloud technologies have to be treated differently, but everything we do is vetted here. It's all approved and verified for us to see. The cool thing about this is that we can look at all these compliance standards. We can see what's inside of there. The other word of note of here is if a new compliancy comes out, Microsoft may or may not have that compliancy on our roadmap, but it takes time to get these compliances. It might take months. If a new compliancy comes out, don't expect Microsoft or really any cloud provider, oh, the new compliance came out yesterday, we're gonna have it tomorrow. No, that's not how it works inside of here. Let's go ahead and take a look at one, the International Traffic in Arms Regulation, or ITAR. And if I look at it, it gives you an overview of what the compliancy is, talks about how Microsoft's looking at it, and it tells you what in-scope services we have. This is very, very important. Just because we say Azure has ITAR does not mean all of Azure has ITAR. And specifically in this one, it says Azure Government. That means only the customers in our Azure Government environment can use this. It's only, and by the way, it's really the only ones it applies to. But if I open this up, it's going to come up with a document saying, hey, an overview of Microsoft compliancy, and it has a document for you to look at. I'm going to go ahead and just agree to that to download this. And I want to show you what this is, because when you start using Azure, if compliancy is important to you, you have to understand not only what compliance offerings we have, but you also have to know this document. We update this document frequently, but it'll tell you the different compliances that we have here. And as I scroll this, here's ITAR. So I just click on ITAR, and it tells me what it is and gives me what services scopes. And it says, see Azure Services and FedRAMP and DoD SRG audit scope. These are all a part of it. Now, where's all that information? Now, I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom of this document, dun, 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 go all the way bottom, and look at the table we have. So just because we say we have a compliance for Azure Government doesn't mean all the services inside of Azure have that as well. Now, you'll notice there's a lot of checks, which means generally we do try to certify everything, but sometimes a service doesn't meet those standards or it's not going to be using those standards. Understand what compliance is important to you. You have to understand these compliance offerings and what we can do. So even before you start to design a solution, if you have a certain governmental compliance that you have to adhere to, do a quick research. Check this document to make sure the stuff you're going to use falls in compliance. Now, we also have another tool called the Compliance Manager. It's one of the few demos we can't do with our subscriptions that we have here, but it'll actually run across your Azure environment and tell you what compliances you're hearing. Hey, I'm looking for this compliance. Do I meet that? It's going to basically do that fact check, pull out this table and check all of that information for you. So we have ways to look at the compliance offerings inside of Azure. Now, the one thing I want to show you, because I mentioned it, let me hop back into my system and let me just show you Advisor real quick. I just want to show you what's there. So I'm just going to do a quick search on Advisor. I know it's a top result. And Advisor comes across and looks at recommendations. And notice I have a recommendation for high availability. I have a recommendation for operational excellence, and it's still checking for performance, security, and cost. We'll see if it comes up with anything here in a second. This is that free tool that's going to give me ideas. So I'm doing well in security, performance is all right, cost is all right. If I say, let's look at the recommendations for high availability, it's going to say, hey, look, you might want to enable a virtual machine backup. You might want to use availability sets. So it's telling me some information. And if I click on, let's use availability sets because we talked about it in this course, it's going to say, talk about moving, and by say it says moving machine to availability set. This is where I got excited the first time I saw this. It's an export and an import operation. It'll lead you through those steps. But if I go back to the Advisor and I go to operational excellence, notice it says create a service health alert. This one is saying, hey, look, we advertise this and you can look for our Azure Service Health if something happened, but this is saying, you know what, why don't you create an alert so if a service health issue impacts your Azure environment, from a Microsoft perspective, you get a notification on this. And let me show you what this looks like, because what I'm going to dig into here is actually the monitoring platform for just a second. Tells me here's what my target is and what I want to do, and I can simply create an action group. So we'll just call this creative name test, short name test, and what are the actions? And we'll say email. And what I can do is set the action type. I can set emails, I can do IT service management, I can run a logic app, I can also do automation runbook, which is our scripting environment. So if I go just email, it then says, what do you want to send an email to? What do you want to send an SMS to? You want push notifications? You want a voicemail? This is all that alerting environment does. So this is the tip of the iceberg for monitoring, but when you start thinking about, hey, we monitor for condition, and I want to be alerted here how it's going to go, and those actions, you can have an email and do an action group, automation script, then run a web function. You can put whatever you want inside the action group. So I just wanted to show that to you briefly because we were out here in the portal. So let me dig back up and we'll close out module 3 inside of our environments today. And what I want to close out with is just a couple special notes, and I've already mentioned it a few times. We have two things in Azure we have Azure, and the Azure that you've been seeing today is what I call Azure Commercial. It's what probably 90% of all of our customers use. It's most likely the customers you're going to use, what you're going to use inside of Azure. It's kind of our public environment of Azure. But we have a couple of special, what are called community clouds, very siloed focus. The first one we have is Azure Government Services. It's specifically designed for US agencies and their contractors where they do things in a very special version of Azure. Matter of fact, physically they are separate regions, they're separate data centers, they're even treated differently. They're very different than our actual public Azure environment, our commercial environment, designed specifically for government compliance. And they adhere to all the government standards, especially when it comes to data center maintenance, logistic management, compliance. These are abundant there at the government resources. I can't use the government cloud. You may not be able to use the government cloud. Why? You have to go through a vetting process. You have to be screened and authorized. But some of our customers that have both a public side of a business, like some of our airline companies and some of our manufacturers, they have a public side of the business, but they also have government contracts. Sometimes some of those organizations will span both. They'll be in the Azure Commercial for their commercial side of their business, and they'll be in Azure Government for their government side of the business. So we have the ability to support those clouds, but they are separate clouds. They can't cross information between. They're treated completely separate. We also have a special cloud in adherence with the Chinese government rules and regulations. It's called Azure China. To access this, you have to access it via 21 ViaNet. And the reason we chose 21 ViaNet is simply because we want to make sure that the cloud is operated by a provider that is in compliance. So we chose 21 ViaNet because they met all the Chinese government regulations to work with that. So on your exam, understand we have Azure Commercial, we have Azure Government, and we have Azure China accessed via 21 ViaNet. Wow, that was a whirlwind. We talked about all the things in security. We covered, network security groups, identity and access, locks, governance, identity protection, and then we ended up with compliance, and we just got done talking about China and government cloud services. So as you can see, folks, there's a lot of stuff around security, privacy, compliancy, and trust. And that brings us to the end of Module 3.